Hey, MBA fans and friends. Nicole Wilson with the Midland Business Alliance. I serve as your Vice President of Economic Development. I am so excited today to be joined by my colleague and friend, Jason Story, who serves as our Director of Talent Initiatives, and share a little bit more about the Talentx initiative. So, Jason, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
It's good to be here.
Yeah. I'd love to know for you, why Midland? Because usually I reserve that question for our Investor Spotlight, but because you're not a Midland native, I have to ask the question.
Well, in its purest form, it was because the recruiter in Detroit said, I got something, but it's not in Detroit. It's in Midland. My family's in Oakland County. I was in D.C. working there and wanting to do this workforce development thing closer to home. I say that I missed like birthdays and surgeries, and that was going on. So then I was like, all right, let's see what's possible. And then like a week or two later, he's like, I got something that sounds like a good fit. It's in Midland. It was kind of what the Dow Championship was coming to town. They really wanted that to sing. Workforce development background, hospitality background. So the idea was let's get started at the country club and go from there. So that's what we did. So not quite my backyard, but still close enough to make a trip in a day.
Yes, wonderful. Well, we're certainly glad you're here. I think from the very first conversation we had, we really talked about, you landing in Midland and the experience of kind of your first impression of Midland. And I'm not sure if I've mentioned it here before, but what we kind of jokingly refer to the Jurassic Park tour of Midland. So maybe you can share our definition or our understanding of the Jurassic Park tour.
I never thought I would get these kind of legs when I mentioned. I was just trying to relate to people. But so I get to town. I've already seen the job description. I don't know if we were quite at the offer letter yet, but like the compensation, all that stuff was kind of laid out. But we want to show you around town. I would get a flavor. So we've got somebody that's going to pick you up, and we're going to show you what we've got. And we drove around town. And I think stopped at a coffee shop and then kind of like pointed to the features, like we got ice arena over here. The person did good. They asked the type of things that I might be interested in. I mentioned hockey, but it certainly wasn't like immersive, and you didn't really get to sort of, get up close and personal with Midland. It was more something from a distance, and it wasn't experiential in that way. So I don't know if it really helped make the difference in terms of is Midland the place for me. So that really never escaped me because I think you're making your decision off of, okay, what is that job description? What's the role? What's the compensation? What's all things considered? But yeah, what about after work ends? What's that going to be like? And as somebody that was across the country, there really wasn't any familiarity whatsoever beyond that experience and whatever Google was able to provide. So that.
Yeah, sure. So I think so many of our recruits to the area have that similar experience where it is. We sell really well on paper the value proposition of the businesses that we work with our business community, with our community. But what does that look and feel like when you come to visit? And so as we really started to talk about talent and how we relate to talent, knowing that that's one of the key factors that make a business successful, certainly the human element, we also started to look at how do we balance work and non-work factors. And so that kind of led us down the path of creating a talent initiative to respond to the challenges that our businesses shared. And that was one of, we need more talent options, right? We need more people. We need more humans who are ready and willing to work. And then we also need to balance that with engaging our workforce differently in terms of retention.
Yeah.
But we kind of have taken it a step further. So maybe you could share a little bit more about kind of the talent lifecycle.
Yeah. So, early on in my time with the MBA, I'd walk by and we'd have our farmer's market van. And on that van, it's like attract and retain. And I was like, we're going to open that up at some point because what attract and retain doesn't answer is like, well, what's in between? In attracting, we say this all the time, is not the same as acquiring. And while you need to start with attracting, I think what most of our businesses are looking for is that acquisition. If we said, well, how many people clicked on our application? 100. How many interviews do we have lined up? 0. It's like, well, that's nice that we've got some potential, but we really need to see that convert. And then once you get people, what do you do with them? And then if you do well with your employees or your personnel, the chances that they're going to stick around are higher. So rather than putting so much in this retention bucket of how do you retain people, which sounds a little bit coercive in its connotations, it's like, well, what do you do to engage people? And that's going to be what helps predict retention. And then there was another missing piece that I was really thoughtful about how to bring up. Is like, well, we can't and don't want to retain people completely, because if we did that, then everybody would have their first job. We want to see mobility. Sometimes people get so upskilled that they become too expensive for us, and we need people to move on, or being able to have young high schoolers take a job and be able to cut their teeth on what that's like to work. Those type of entry level opportunities, they don't always necessarily pay the most, but they do provide an opportunity for people that don't have experience. So let's talk about what that would mean. And it's offboarding, or it's just this idea of people leaving on their own, people being asked to leave, people retiring, all sorts of different reasons why people move in and out of the workplace. And we certainly don't want to look at this idea of attraction and retention without looking at this idea that it doesn't end there. It ends a step further, and then it circles right back around.
Sure, it absolutely does. And, I had a great conversation with Sharon Miller recently. And in that conversation, she said, every opportunity that you have to walk through a door gives you a bit more information. It helps you to grow as a professional and grow your knowledge, but also help you to really understand where it is you want to be. So I think, very relevant to this conversation. Even more, we talk about accessibility of leadership. We talk about how we have incredible leaders who have years of experience and really unique experiences that have brought them to where they are in their careers. And how do we actively work toward being sure that those folks and that institutional knowledge and community building and sense of ownership and all of those elements, how do we make sure that we retain that in our community? So a unique element of the talent continuum or the talent life cycle that we've built is really talking about succession. And what does that mean as a business? What does it mean as, a community board or organization? And moreover, as a community, how do we start to think about succession and continuity differently? So maybe touch on where we're headed with that.
Well, especially as a community that was, labeled as number one place to retire, we probably want to be looking at succession alongside of that. And I think you said it best, is like there's a lot of wisdom, resources, connections, and all sorts of history of learning what maybe works and doesn't work. And you want to be able to transmit that over to your successors, between predecessor and successor, to be able to make sure that these transitions are smooth, because even within a business, or certainly across a community, we want continuity, smoothness. We don't want these bumpy patches or something's going awesome and then it has a huge downturn. And one of the key stones and one of the key points to be able to ensure that is right there at these junctures where we have new people entering into opportunities, and then other people sort of letting some of those opportunities go for new opportunities.
Sure. Thank you. The other element that I think is really unique to the work that we're doing is maybe something that we're just about to launch.
Yeah.
We certainly talked about quite a bit. So I want to touch on our Talentx video series very briefly, and then let's talk about kind of what's the next evolution of that.
Yeah.
So we have a community collaborative group that meets monthly. Talentx is the initiative name. And we have worked with them and Frank Films to put together a talent video series.
Yeah.
So the way that I describe it, and I would love it if you correct me if you want to position it differently, but the Talentx video series was really created to enable our businesses to show off the value proposition of the community right alongside that of an offer letter. So ultimately, all of the assets that we've pulled together and have created, that video series will be available via QR code and accessible. Simply, scan it with your camera at the bottom of your offer letter and see what the community has to offer as a value proposition right alongside that of our business.
All I could say is ditto. I mean, recruiters need a tool, job seekers need a tool, and employers need a tool, or hiring managers need a tool, and also, some of our career advisors need a tool to be able to say, here's what you would do when you're not working. We got to have great jobs, employers of choice, and we want to have a community of choice. You got to showcase both of those if we want to be able to have the people of choice, the people with competence and the talent. And that's where we kind of go right back to square one with that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Now we're headed into some unique territory as an MBA initiative with Talentx. And really that's come at the interest of some of the businesses that have attended the talent workshops that we've hosted, that you've led, and hearing more about the work of Talentx and looking to kind of bring those concepts from community of choice to how do I become an employer of choice, and what could that look like? So perhaps you can share a bit more.
Yeah, so we do a lot of work on the ecosystem. I love the way that you put it, and like at the state level, regional level, even at the county level, at the city level, across partners that are in this space in one way or another. And we're key at the table to make sure that the direction that we take at the systems level is cohesive. But what do we do to be able to get in the trenches for businesses, members or non-members alike, businesses? When is that systems level work going to touch me? Maybe a little bit slower than saying, if you need help when it comes to how you manage your talent, whether that's recruitment, engagement, or sustaining your workforce, or maybe it's supporting the direction of the company, the culture of the company, or the systems of the company. How can we join forces in those ways to be able to support the business's performance through its people? And that's why we want people. We say we want talent attraction. We want to do what? Well, to succeed in the workplace. And if we can be able to create harmony in that by going right into the workplace and being responsive to their needs rather than having like a prescript, I think that would be pretty potent for success.
Sure. So what we will be kind of showcasing over the next few months and launching a little bit more formally is an opportunity for private consulting, you being the practitioner and subject matter expert in supporting those concepts as employers of choice inside of those businesses as an opportunity.
Yeah, I think if we get that right, I think that we're going to be able to have our pick, of the people that we like on our team, be able to, I like to say, try to make people better for their workplace and try to make the workplace better for their people. And I think that that's kind of an era that we're in when it comes to like organizational development. You've got your financial resources and maybe your physical resources and social capital, but it's that human capital or the people that I think is the most untapped resource that we really have to work with. And I think that there's a new workforce that's wanting to, and I think it's always changing, but I think this new workforce is wanting to be able to kick butt, do a great job, but also have some enjoyability while they do it. And I think the nuance to deliver that as a company, I think is quite novel for what we've seen in years past, decades past.
Sure. So some folks might say, this sounds a whole lot like the culture work that's existed in the past. How is this different than simply saying we're going to fix our culture, or we're going to work on our culture? How is this more than a potluck or a workshop to talk about happiness or?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned this in a discussion just a few weeks ago, is that, well, it's still a net loss if you have a winning culture but losing performance, like in the Super Bowl or even the Olympics. It's like, well, we lost, but we had a great time losing. It's like, well, it's hard, I think, to feel good when you're losing. So I think that it's about, you want to have a resilient culture that knows how to face adversity and difficulties with grace, but we still need to perform. And what we're trying to do is link those performance pieces with the behavioral ones, understanding that that relationship feeds one another. So it's not just about looking at how are we interacting with one another. It's actually looking at the design of jobs or the work or the way that performance is measured as well. And it's also linking those two pieces, the behavior and the performance, with the direction of the company. Because we could be really busy, getting along really well doing it, but not getting anywhere where it is that we think we're going or plan on going, or maybe we don't even have a plan on where we're going. So all three of those pieces are pretty crucial in terms of a preferred business performance or behavior outcome. We want to be able to provide all of that support in a way that's practical, like you said. It's like, okay, I don't want to sit and get a bunch of theory. We're in business today, and we need to make use of things today and apply resources to things that are going to make a difference today. So everything is about moving the needle in the here and now, but also looking forward.
Sure. So creating systems and opportunities for folks to excel,
Mm-hmm.
really. And I think we do that so wonderfully as a community. So I think designing that opportunity to also support our businesses is really exciting for me.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I think it's really nice to have that 1-2 combo between working at the systems level, but being able to zoom in as well, because I think that informs your perspective and the sort of changes and decisions you're making in the macro by being able to jump into that micro orientation as well, and vice versa.
Sure, absolutely. So we're excited about this new opportunity. while we're still kind of finalizing, I think that we are leaning toward Talentx advisory and really talking about how we help to create performance architecture. So that's that systems reference. So I'm excited about it. I know you're excited about it. I think it's something a little bit unique for the MBA to kind of roll something out like this. So more to come. And anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I just think that, I think of the community's vision statement right now, like bold and forward together. And I think this is a good example of all three of those things happening together. In our strategic plan at the Midland Business Alliance, we talk about being innovative. I think this is a testament to that. I think we're responsive and listening to the business community of saying, what value can I get, with my membership, or even if I'm a business in the community through the MBA, and being able to say, we've got something for you.
For more information on Talentx and any of our MBA initiatives, visit our mbami.org website. Check out the initiatives tab, and you'll find everything you need to know.